Hello, 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 powerful women. Welcome back to Yes Mujer Build It. I am actually recording an episode today. So you may have noticed that we've been replaying some of our older episodes because there's some fundamental tools that I taught at the very beginning of launching my podcast and wanted to get those tools out there to the world again. So we've redone the episode on belief work, right? What is belief work? The episode on be, do, have. What is be, do, have? And then the episode around the story of the two wolves, which I love. But today I'm actually coming to you guys and recording a timely episode on why I no longer talk about politics with most people. Yes. If you're listening to this in real time, then you know we're about to go into a time where we're going to be voting for the presidential election. So let me start by prefacing this with a little bit of history. I was actually a political activist in my 20s, in my teens and in my 20s. After I went to Van Nuys High School, yep, that's where I went to high school, I went to community college, ended up at Valley College, if you guys know Valley College. And that was my first awakening to being what I call politicized, which means being taught information that then awoke in me this truth that I had always been living in, but didn't really know how to language, didn't know how to put into words, but I had always felt. There had always been this deep anger in me and this deep connection to justice work. In fact, for a long time, I thought I wanted to be an attorney because I was so focused around wanting to be a justice advocate, right? And then I started learning about the politicizing of the criminal justice system. I took a class called Sociology of Criminal Justice and learned about what was happening in the criminal justice system. And this was one of the first reality checks I had around, oh, the way the systems are set up is poor people get jail, rich people get out because they can bail themselves out or they can afford a good attorney that can then support them through. So it isn't about right or wrong. Bad people go to jail. It's poor people go to jail. And then I read books that really opened my eyes up to how much injustice there was in the world. At the time, also, if you'll remember, Prop 187 had come out. I think I was still in high school when Prop 187 came out, but it was a proposition that essentially said that when you signed up your child to go to school, you had to show quote unquote papers. You had to show that they were in the country legally to go to school. So it was taking away the basic human right of every child being able to go to school based on legality, right? Whether they were born here or not, which really has to do with geography and has nothing to do with the child, has more to do with the parent and the decisions the parent had made, right? So the injustice of that, I felt deeply. Then I ended up going to college and stepped even more into an awakening around how unfair, unjust this country really is. Now, keep in mind, I grew up in a household where I was told over and over again that Guatemala was the most beautiful country in the world and that we should go back. But we were here because Guatemala had been messed up by US policies. And so I already had an idea that the US and its policies weren't necessarily doing the best outside of the US, that the US was going into other countries and messing them up, mostly to exploit land, to exploit commodities, to exploit resources that those countries had, right? We had taken over. You guys know this history of the US. I don't have to repeat it all to you, but I will say that through these awakenings and learning a bunch of information, I had a deep sense of there has to be a way to right this injustice. I have to do something with my life that then has people wake up to the fact that this injustice is happening and do something about it. And I feel like many of my listeners, I feel like you guys have a similar inner voice that is telling you we need to do something about this, right? So in my 20s, I attended rallies, I attended marches, I protested against Prop 209, which was the affirmative action, meaning I was pro the establishment of affirmative action and against the repeal of affirmative action, which is what Prop 209 was doing at the time. So I've had a robust political life. Then I became a mom. And all of a sudden, things like diapers and wipies and how I was raising my child became much more important than what was happening in terms of the political landscape, right? And I discovered transformational work, which really has to do with what we are bringing to the table. Transformational work taught me that I'm responsible for all of my results. I'm responsible for whether or not I'm affecting change in other people, that I take responsibility for how I show up in spaces, and that I'm responsible for what gets initiated in those spaces and what doesn't. So it was such a reality check for me of, oh, I'm not a victim to what's happening around me. I'm not a victim to the political system. I'm not a victim to the criminal justice system. I'm not a victim to the education system. Interesting, right? And I don't necessarily have an answer to that. But I will tell you that I don't see myself as a victim to any of that. I see myself as a change agent within those spaces, that I'm wanting to be a stand for change in those spaces. And it's a complicated life. I ended up marrying a white man who's technically Italian or Italian descent, but pretty much white, although he grew up in the projects of Pacoima. So we have similar backgrounds and yet different backgrounds, right? Because I was politicized at a very young age, whereas he was taught to believe that all politics was horrible and that all politicians were corrupt and there was no justice in any of that world. So all of this led me to conversations during Thanksgiving, which we're also going into coming up shortly. All of this led me to conversations during Thanksgivings, during holiday get-togethers, during family gatherings around politics. And here's what I found. Here's why I no longer speak about politics to most human beings. What I discovered along this path is that my intention of actually affecting change, my intention of being a change agent was going to go on death's ear to most people. Most people were not going to be open to what I had to say. One, they already had their dogma, they already had their beliefs, they were already stuck in whatever ideology they had picked up. They were already believing whatever it is they had been taught, or whatever they had seen on TV or whatever they were picking up, wherever they were getting their news. They already believed whatever they were going to believe. So I was not actually going to be able to affect change in them. So why was I even speaking? Why was I getting into arguments with people in my family when they were not understanding anything about the position that I was seeing? And I would get myself really worked up. I would get myself really passionately worked up around these policies and what was being said, and feeling attacked most of the time, and also feeling like, how can we both live in the same city and see things so differently? How can we both be on the same planet and see things so differently? How can you also be Latina and have voted for Trump? I mean, that to me was just like a slap in the face to our people. It really was shocking to me. But here's what I discovered. The Latina who voted for Trump, I wasn't going to change her mind. I mean, I would have to do a lot of work on myself to calm my nervous system down enough to reach across the aisle and have her calm her nervous system down enough for us to actually have an authentic conversation. Was I willing to do that? No, I wasn't willing to calm myself down enough to actually reach across the aisle to her. Because what I discovered was that my energy, my centering of myself was better used in moving our agenda forward, moving the agenda of brown people deserve to make more money, deserve to have a seat at the table, deserve to be fully self-expressed in this society. That vision, that intention, that was what fuels me. That was going to get me further, closer to actually creating change than sitting and having these conversations with these women, most of them which are Latinas who also have money and happen to be privileged Latinas who were choosing to believe whatever they were choosing to believe. I just decided to move my energy over to a whole nother population of people who were already feeling what I was feeling. And what we were going to do together was going to be more impactful. So, moral of the story is be aware of what your intention is. When you're going into a political conversation with somebody, what is your intention? Because if your intention really is to open their mind to a different way of looking at things, then you're going to need to calm yourself down. You're going to need to be able to reach across the aisle and actually feel like you're hugging this person and like this person is hugging you back. And then you can have a conversation about change. But until that happens, it's very challenging to actually enroll someone, there's that word, or open somebody's mind up to looking at things from a different perspective when they've already been indoctrinated into whatever they believe. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of work. So you got to look at what is really your intention. Trust me that once I figured out my intention was to be a change agent, I stopped wasting my time on a bunch of people. I stopped bringing up politics because I would end up getting upset. And then what would that serve? I wouldn't change the other person's mind. I would just get all riled up and, be all in my feelings. And then I would end up not feeling great at the Thanksgiving dinner or not feeling great at the kid's birthday party or whatever family event it was. So I decided I'm just going to not get myself all riled up that way anymore with people that aren't worth that amount of energy. Let me save my energy and use it to actually move us forward, to move our agenda forward. Let me use it with people who are already aligned to what I'm saying, already in their core beliefs. Their instinct is that we get to take back our freedom and they want to work towards that. Let's align and use our energy towards that. The reason I wanted to do this episode today was because I want you to know, if you're listening to this, that you do have a choice here. You don't have to show up the way everybody else shows up. Even if you are a political agent, as I like to call us, meaning you have really strong political views. You don't have to talk politics at every family event or every event that you're at even. You can choose to be a political agent who creates change in other ways. In fact, this weekend, I had an amazing weekend this weekend where I feel like I was doing political work, but none of it was direct political work. And I hung out with people who are also doing political work, and none of them are doing it directly either. Meaning none of us are directly talking about politics, but we're all talking about our underlying beliefs that as brown people, we get to be fully self-expressed in whatever way we want. So Friday, went to see one of my favorite bands of all time, Osomatli. Shout out to Osomatli. Shout out to the entire band, Azru, Raul, all of them, Ulysses. Got to see them play and spent a little bit of time talking to Raul. And I was reminded of how they met, right? Because I don't know if you guys know Osomali. They're an LA-based band that was formed in 1995, which is around the time I graduated high school. So I knew all of them from back in the day. They met at a political rally. And they are actually what I call a politicized group, although they don't put that out there necessarily. But if you listen to their songs, that is what they're doing. If you listen to their songs and you are a person who is aware that we are a conquered people, you will hear that resonated in their music. That will resonate with you. So powerful. So they are choosing to create change through music, through sound, right? Isn't that beautiful? Then I had dinner with an amazing human being on Saturday night who is choosing to create change through style and fashion. Yes, using fashion as a way to be fully self-expressed and then also allow others to be fully self-expressed, because that's what happens when we are fully self-expressed. So these are two examples of how you can be a change agent out in the world, doing your work, whether it's through fashion, through music, through coaching, which is how I do the work. Whatever way, whether it's working for a nonprofit or maybe you're working in corporate America and you're doing your work within that construct, whatever it is, you can be doing your work without needing to necessarily talk about politics straight out. And you can be supporting the people who are talking about politics straight out without directly supporting them. You can be supporting people through you being authentically you, whatever that shows up as, and you believing what you believe without needing to get into these political arguments. This is why I no longer talk about politics with most people, because my intention isn't necessarily to change a bunch of people's minds. My intention is to move our agenda forward. My intention is to move brown women's agenda forward, that we own who we really are, powerful, passionate geniuses, and that we get out there in the world and make a bigger impact in whatever way we want to make it. That's it. As long as I'm moving that forward, I don't feel the need to talk to my neighbors, my in-laws about whether or not they're voting for who they're voting for. I feel in alignment with my own political beliefs. I've also learned to save my energy. Save your energy for the places you really want to use it in. Not everybody deserves your energy or deserves your political commentary. Not everybody's ready to hear it. And for a lot of people, it's just wasted air on them. So I just say to those people who don't understand my perspective or why I'm passionate about what I'm passionate about, I just say, okay, yeah, that's okay. And then I let it go. I don't even get into that conversation with them. They don't deserve my energy when it comes to that work. And I hold that work sacred. I mean, I'm doing political work. Even though I don't call any of my coaching political, you won't hear me talk about politics on this podcast most of the time. You won't hear me necessarily talk about politics in my coaching rooms. We don't talk about it. But underneath it all, if I'm waking up Latinas to who we really are, yeah, you best believe it is actually really political work. So, in summary, be mindful of your intention when you're getting into conversations these next couple of weeks. Be mindful of your intention. What is your intention during these conversations? Save your energy. Save your energy for where it's really going to make a difference. And you can still be a political agent indirectly. You can be doing what you love to do with your own authentic belief system. And that is also political work. I love all of you, and I can't wait to connect with all of you and see you on the next episode of Yes Mujer Build It. And may we all make it through this next week. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.